So I think there's different personality types where things just come more natural. And then some of us need to have these coaching tools and work on this stuff a little more and really practice it like a muscle at the gym until it does become the new thing. That is the thing, that the more people you work with, you realize there's no magic formula. I think however we grew up, a big part of coaching is helping people, whatever it was, to take responsibility, because we're not that child anymore, right? A child is very egocentric, right? The whole world, they don't know any better because just child development, right? The whole world revolves around them. So if something bad happens, or in the environment, something they can't control, it's happening to them. Some people don't grow out of those childish ways. They become an adult and still think everything's happening to them. Guess what so-and-so said? They made me so mad. No, you allowed yourself to be mad. They said something, and that's their right to say something. How do you want to feel instead of mad? And then we work through that.
What's going on, everybody? And welcome back to the Abundant Journey podcast. Nick James, your host, along with Nick Offenkamp, hanging out with you. We are super excited. We got an amazing episode lined up. We got Chris Jansen, who is coming to you from California. She's got an amazing story, both with her own journey, but she spends a lot of time with entrepreneurs, high achievers. She's got a few books that she's written. And man, we're excited to dive into your story. Chris, how are you? Thanks for hanging out with us today.
I'm on fire. Yeah, I'm great. How are you?
Oh man, we're doing good up here in Washington. You know, the season is changing. The mornings are getting darker, but we are excited to hang out with you regardless. Now, how long have you been in California?
I'm born and raised third generation Californian. In 2020, we did move to Colorado part-time. We thought it was going to be full-time, and I got a little homesick, so it's part-time.
Sure.
We were brand new empty nesters, and it was 2020, and we just up and moved.
Oh man. Well, there's I'm sure a story in that in and of itself, but tell our audience a little bit about what a day in the life is looking like for you today, which I'm sure is a loaded question, and then we'll go back to your backstory.
Right. So, today I'm getting ready for a book launch in March. So today my days are filled with everything book launch, finishing edits, getting, the word out there to move pre-orders, that type of thing. But what I do, I'm a life coach, and then I write books for my clients. So I help, my niche over the years has become helping high achieving perfectionists navigate performance pressure, overcome self-sabotage, rewrite narratives. That's a big part of what I do. And really attach meaning to life events and circumstances outside of our control, right? The things that happen when what's the meaning we attach to something that happened outside of our control, and that turns into a belief, and those things we live with, and that can affect us in business and in life.
I love that, and obviously there's a lot there, so I'm excited to unpack what all of those things mean, as well as talk about your books and the project that you're currently working on. I think it would be helpful to even just start to get into your backstory of like, all right, how did you end up in this world of life coaching and helping these high achieving individuals? Was that something that just from a very young age you knew, at 6 years old, this is what I'm going to do with my life? Or how did you stumble into this career?
Yeah, I think a lot like most people, right? We're experts at serving the person we once were, right? Mm-hmm. And so I was a psychology major in college. And then it was just always an interest of mine. And then as soon as I graduated, I went to grad school in Los Angeles, where I'm living right now, and got a master's in counseling psychology. And because of that, I really saw, like, I think a lot of people that take that route is we're sure we want to help people, and we're saying we want to help people, but I was very interested in it to kind of help myself, right? That's why there was an interest. So as a young, like all of us in our 20s and younger teenagers, especially, I think I was a very sensitive, perfectionistic kid and a very high growth driven achiever, but in the bad way, in the ways that were not helpful, right? And so I think I was going to school and learning all these things to kind of solve that, which I thought was a problem. I had a lot of guilt and shame as a young kid, and or as a young adult even. And so when I graduated, it just seemed like it almost was making it worse. Like being in the problem, like ruminating, marinating in the past, labeling things, giving diagnoses and to psychoses and these types of things was not, I learned quickly it wasn't really my thing. So I did graduate. I even got a license. I'm licensed to be a counselor in schools, actually in California. Still, I keep it current with K through 12. So I worked a lot with kids because that was fun. I worked a lot with autistic children in the LA Unified School District. Gosh, this was so long ago. You're bringing up memories. But then I started, my husband and I have been married 29 years this month. And we started our family. We raised 3 kids. And so I was a stay-home mom. I didn't work in counseling or therapy while I was raising the kids. So I can't remember what year, but somewhere in those years, coaching came on the scene. And it wasn't a thing when I was in grad school. Coaching came on the scene. And I thought, this is fantastic. It's all about what works, not what hasn't worked in the past. It's all about, okay, yeah, these things happened. Great. We all have a childhood. We all have vastly different stories but that was no longer that interesting to me. What was interesting is, what do we want to do now? Where do we want to go from here? And that's that abundance mindset, right? Not just getting out of the lack and focusing on lack. Look, what do we want now? And what do we want to do instead of labeling? We can create a label. What do I want the label to be? Or do I even need one at all? So I went back to school and became a coach. So I'm a board certified life coach. And that was I went to a Tony Robbins conference and I just thought, oh my gosh, this is all the stuff that I love. So I worked for Tony Robbins for a bit as a coach for him. And that was fantastic. I got to coach a lot of small businesses and entrepreneurs and people all over the world. And then right now what I'm doing is focusing on my own business, Chris Jansen Coaching. And then in 2020, when we were in quarantine, I thought I want to write all my favorite coaching tools down for my clients. And I just thought, it'll be so easy to say, because I do assignments and we do prep work between calls. I thought if this was all written down, I could say, hey, go read chapter 7 before the next call. And I was honestly going to just write it in a pamphlet and have it, I don't think we have Kinko's anymore, but, take it to a Kinko's And one of my clients is an author, a really successful fiction writer. And so I asked her if she could put it in her little software program. And she said, oh, I think you should get an editor and make this a real book. This is good. So I did and rewrote that with an editor for a year and then self-published a book and then fell in love with the whole process and writing. And now I'm launching my second book, which also has the coaching tools in it. With a publisher. Which is so fun. I love the collaborative effort. I'm glad I self-published because I learned what needs to be done. This is just more fun though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh. That's it. There you go.
What a phenomenal story. I love all of the different turns in there. And it also is a very cohesive story, and then it makes sense of where you're at today. And I love the alignment there. It's kind of funny. A lot of the entrepreneurs that we talk with, they're kind of like a pinball in a pinball machine, just bouncing back and forth until finally, they hit the jackpot. But it is really cool to hear just how one thing after another keeps building in your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I also wanted to just ask, so you mentioned working with high achievers, recovering perfectionists, high achievers who self-sabotage. I'd love to dive into that more. And perhaps we could either talk, it might be helpful to just get some definitions of, okay, what is a high achieving person? What is perfectionism? What is self-sabotage? But also I think would be interesting, especially with your background, to talk about what are some of the common pathologies that you see among high achievers that lead towards these tendencies.
Yeah. So I think I didn't used to understand the difference between a perfectionist. And I didn't understand the difference between a perfectionist and an achiever, really. So to me, and this is just something I created. I'm not saying this as I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist. Let's just say that. To me, I'll say a high growth driven achiever, right? They will do whatever it takes to get the goal, right? They also, like the achievers I work with, we really work on not dumping that outcome when things aren't going right. Instead, we stay in the strategy. We tweak the tactics, right? We commit to the outcome and we stay true to that. And then we keep what works and dump what doesn't. A perfectionist might be, without coaching or without it being pointed out to them that this is what they're doing, they might tend to think, well, if it's not perfect and I'm not getting that goal, it's trash. I'm trash. They might think that's a shame thought, right? Instead of going, yeah, every successful person has to do way more stuff that doesn't work than does on their way to getting their outcome. So a perfectionist is quick to kind of crumple up the paper and throw it in the trash and dump the whole thing. And then if we're going into self-sabotage, heap shame and guilt on themselves for not reaching their outcome. Or be quick to say, oh, I wasn't meant to do this. The signs, the universe, whatever, is pointing that this wasn't my course. Right. And when I'm coaching people, I'm saying, no, this larger outcome is still the goal. We're just going to be way out of our comfort zone and meet a lot of resistance on the way to that goal. And that means it's working, and that's normal. Right.
I love that reframing, that the resistance, I think at least if I'm hearing you right, the perfectionist thinks the resistance is evidence that they're a failure or evidence that it's not working, as opposed to the resistance is the very thing that's evidence that it is working and that things are going in the right direction. You talk a little bit about, and you've mentioned a couple times, the sabotage piece. So does that come after with the perfectionist, where it's, this isn't working, so I'm going to self-sabotage? Or do you see it sometimes where things are working and maybe people get freaked out or they don't anticipate the success, so they self-sabotage? Where does that fall in place here?
Both. That's really good. Yeah, both. We can be uncomfortable. So being out of the comfort zone is what we want to normalize and be comfortable with. And so both ways, what you just said, being out of it can be very uncomfortable if we haven't had that level of success before, right? So in that is, I do a lot of coaching around this because that's our belief system, right? What is the story? The fact is we're about to reach a new level in our business or our personal life, whatever it is. And what story are you attaching to that fact? If the story is, I see this all the time, if the story is, well, things like this don't happen to me. This doesn't happen to people in my socioeconomic background. This didn't happen to my parents, so I'm not worthy of this. All those things, all those are just, that's self-sabotage. And that's just, that would be an example of self-sabotaging when something's going well, right? We think we don't deserve it. And all that is those, it's not wrong to have those thoughts. We're human. It's just, they're just thoughts. So what a coach will do is go, those thoughts, for one, that's a scarcity mindset, and it's not an abundant mindset, and it's not serving us, and you're not going to reach your goal because you're reinforcing this belief that you're not going to get where you want to go. So what we want to do is dump those, not feel bad that we had those thoughts. It's not wrong. We're just going to flip them to different thoughts, and we can do that even before we believe it, right? Turn it into a mantra, an affirmation, visualize, get in touch with that goal of what we actually want. And we have to condition and practice that repetition, right? Just the visualization of even before we really believe it in our gut, we've got to make that the new story. And I tell people all the time, it took a long time to form that old story or that old narrative of this doesn't happen to people like me or whatever it is. Once we find it, you let people know it's not wrong to have it. It's just we're going to flip it. And it took a while subconsciously, even before maybe you were aware of it, to be telling yourself these old stories. So be patient. It will take time to condition the new one. And so we're just going to keep conditioning it though until it becomes second nature, until it becomes the new normal.
Yeah. Where do you think those original stories tend to come from, whether they're limiting beliefs or the things that lead to self-sabotage? I've got thoughts, but I'd love to hear just from your experience and as you meet with your coaching clients, if you see certain patterns.
And that's the thing. I think that is the thing that the more people you work with, you realize there's no magic formula to these things and to being human. I think it can be all kinds of things. That's why it's important to have a coach or to get to the bottom of where is that person's coming from. Sure, it could be outside voices. It could be our childhood. It could be the environment. Could be all those things. It also a lot has to do with the personalities we were born with, right? I used to, in one of the jobs I had, we did the DISC assessment. And so there's all kinds of great assessments, personality assessments now. The bottom line of those is, and why they're helpful, is it just shows us that we all have a different personality. Like, for example, I'm very sensitive. If someone says something that I allow to hurt me, I can stew on that for years later. I can remember that. My husband is like, in Ted Lasso, how Ted Lasso coaches, the guy to be a goldfish. Like, that's the key to happiness. Well, I get it. Yeah. Cause goldfish have a short memory, right? Well, my husband can be a goldfish. Something can happen. He's not highly sensitive. He'll forget about it and move on. And I understand that that's, the goal for me, at least. That's a better way to do it. But how do I do it? Because naturally, that doesn't come natural to me. So I think there's different personality types where things just come more natural. And then some of us need to have these coaching tools and work on this stuff a little more and really practice it like a muscle at the gym until it does become the new thing.
Yeah.
What I'm curious, what you said you had some answers to that. What is your take on it?
Thoughts. I don't know. I don't know that I've got answers. And certainly not nearly as well thought out as yours. I mean, I think you hit on a lot of them in terms of messages that you receive as a child. It does seem like there's a as I read the different biographies and things of high achieving individuals, it does seem like there's a lot of childhood demons that they're trying to compensate for, a lot of voices from those formative years that they're trying to prove wrong, trying to prove that they are enough in the world. And that can be a dangerous thing, right? Because it can kind of create this this bottomless pit or vacuum of no matter how much you achieve, there's always another pinnacle that's higher. There's always somebody that's doing more. There's always something else that's cool that you could, or not even just could, but often feel like you should be doing. And therefore, because you should do it and you aren't doing it, that becomes its own sort of self-defeating spiral. So as I've read and talked with folks, and even as I've done some of my own personal work, I know that those are a lot of the things that pop up. But I think that you're really right in that the human experience is as unique as every individual human. And so there isn't a one size fits all as to, where these different voices or stories come from. And I do love how you help people to rewrite and reframe, revisit those stories. I'm curious too, just in your work with folks, how long does that take, or what are kind of the keys to success that you see for people to actually adopt these stories? I know you mentioned some things about mantras, affirmations, visualization. I'm just curious how you go about, figuring out what that's going to look like for each individual, and kind of what sort of timelines are normal, in as much as you can say anything's normal in this world.
Exactly. I don't think, that goes back to we're all different. We're all humans. Some people right away, like mid-sentence, will go, the light bulb comes on, they go, I got it. We're good. Let's move on. Let's go to the next outcome. Right? It's just, that's what coaching is. You're partnering with someone to point out, like an athletic coach on the sideline, right? I can see strengths and weaknesses, and the player may not see. As soon as they're pointed out, you're partnering so they can win the game. Some people, it's that light bulb, got it. And then some people, they want to talk about it more and process, and that's all fine. I don't want people to be in coaching forever. I don't think that's, most of my clients, we've got a starting date and an end date, and then they may come back every 6 months or once a year for a tune-up, right? Just to kind of be reminded. But I don't think, or maybe there's a new level of, they're starting a new business, or they're going to the next level. So they wanted perspective on that. Something you just said though is I think however we grew up, a big part of coaching is helping people, whatever it was, to take responsibility, because we're not that child anymore, right? A child is very egocentric, right? The whole world, they don't know any better, because just child development, right? The whole world revolves around them. So if something bad happens, or in the environment, something they can't control, it's happening to them. Some people don't grow out of those childish ways. They become an adult and still think everything's happening to them. Guess what so-and-so said? They made me so mad. No, you allowed yourself to be mad. They said something, and that's their right to say something. How do you want to feel instead of mad? And then we work through that. So a big part of becoming an adult and not being a child anymore is learning that regardless of how your upbringing was, or what personality you were born with, or what your external circumstances are, or the lot you were handed in life, it's still our responsibility to do with that, to adopt an abundant mindset or a scarcity mindset, right? That's the the old be a victim or be a victor.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of this, I should say too, a lot of this, like we talked about mantras and affirmations and, these cliches, a lot of these things, we've heard them over and over again in pop psychology, but the fundamentals they work. That's why these things are so popular, right? And so I think self-help, we try to complicate it sometimes and make up these big words and labels and things, and it's really doesn't have to be so. It doesn't have to be like that. I work with people in the fundamentals mostly. Yeah. I mean, I'll do a vision board if it's going to help somebody.
Yeah.
Let's get the dream board out because it works.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's good. Chris, I want to go back just a little bit into your story because I think the power comes from your story. And one of the things you said was that early on, the perfectionism, the high achieving was in many ways debilitating. You've talked about some of your clients where you help them with their light bulb moments and the freedom that comes from that. What were some of those moments for you? And it's interesting as you share because, Nick and I both have 3 kids. I got another one on the way, but some of mine are like that as well, of that perfectionism. Instantly, if I'm going to pick up something and try it the first time, and if I am not an expert level at it, it's debilitating and I'm a failure at life. And so I'm just curious for you on your journey, what were some of those light bulb moments that helped you break out of that?
That's good. Well, one of them was having I have 3 kids also, and they're all in their 20s now. And one is a highly creative, super talented artist and a perfectionist. So that was a light bulb. How do I help this kid? Oh my gosh, he's self-sabotaging and he's so talented. So I don't want that to happen. So congrats on your one on the way. Is that your fourth or the
fourth
third?
Girl?
Oh my gosh. I love it. Oh my goodness. I have 2 boys and 1 girl. Oh, they're so great.
Oh yeah.
But that shows you too, right? That is a good point. Being a parent shows you, I did the same thing with 2 of them are only a year and a half apart. I did the same exact thing with both, and they're completely different personalities. So night and day. So, that's the part where I really tested that belief that people are born with different personalities. So, my light bulb moment, thank you for that question, was so I'm in my mid 50s. When I was 30, in my early 30s, like mid 30s, let's say, this second book is about my story of sobriety. So I became sober from alcohol in 2007. I was 37 years old. Before that happened, I had this belief that I was a monster. I had a belief that I was trash. And I know that it's hard for me to even say that out loud now because I work so much on language and other people's language. But thinking back, I really did. And that one of my favorite coaching tools is helping people with their belief, right? Mm-hmm. So what we do is we everything that happens in life that's truth or a fact, we get to attach a story to that truth, right? So in my case, I was my body was addicted to alcohol. It was started as just social back then. It was in the culture at the time, right? We didn't have all these mocktails and alcohol-free health trends. And it was just, you were kind of weird if you didn't drink, at least in my circles. On the flip side, I grew up in a family of teetotalers, very like a religious domination that didn't drink, didn't dance. My parents didn't raise me in that denomination, but because they were raised in that, they didn't drink, their parents didn't drink. So I had this, grew up and didn't know anything about alcohol, then was, in the typical public high school, doesn't matter. I don't know why I said public, just high school. And then college, where that was the kids drank alcohol. That just was my experience. And so I didn't know, I just kind of, you're young, I kind of went on as if, but I didn't understand that this wasn't working for me. And then when it started to become, I just knew in my gut it was a problem. And I was very confused about it because I didn't know anyone else from my family or friends that had a problem with alcohol. I didn't know anyone that was labeled an alcoholic. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know why it was such a problem for me. So I developed this belief. So that was my fact. The story I attached to that fact was I'm trash. I'm a monster because which was such a ridiculous story because here I was, I had 3 babies. I was just crushing it in all other areas of life. I would get up before the kids got up, go on my run, kept a great household, had a great marriage, had wonderful friends. So I didn't look at any of that. It was such a scarcity mindset too, because I looked at the one thing I wasn't able to manage, and I decided I formed this identity that I was a monster. And so that's why I work with people to, what is the story you're attaching to your fact? Because that will become your belief about other people, life circumstances, and about yourself. So I had this belief that I was a monster. It was a crazy belief because I thought, well, I have no self-discipline. I can't quit this. I have no willpower, which I actually do. I am very disciplined and have a lot of willpower, but in that area I didn't. So I finally, I tell the story in the book, but I found a community of people to help me, a sober community. And the first meeting, a woman in the group said, it was a women's meeting. And I looked it up online in the middle of the night one night, feeling very low. And I went the next day and she said, it's not your fault. You have a condition. It's like an allergy and you never have to have another drink again. And I know it doesn't happen this way for everybody, but for me, who had been so low and trying so hard to quit drinking on my own, no amount of willpower or self-discipline was helping me. In that moment, all that shame of being a monster, I felt a physical release. Like it felt like it just went off my shoulders. And so I stayed in this group and let these people teach me the solution to this because they had the same problem I had. And so I learned this was nothing to be ashamed of. It wasn't my fault. There was a solution. I finally met people to help me with it. And so in that moment, my belief switched from I'm a monster to, yeah, the fact is the same. I'm still addicted to alcohol, but now I'm deserving. I'm a loved person deserving of recovery. So that was my experience. And I know that doesn't happen for everybody. A lot of people come in and hear you never get to have another drink again. I went in and what I heard was you never have to have another drink again because I was exhausted from trying to control this. I just wanted to be a good mom. I wanted to be with my kids. I wanted this healthy life that I love, and I didn't know how to stop drinking alcohol because obviously it's very addictive. And so if we're addicted to something, it's hard to kick it. So I talk a lot about not isolating, being in community, and then the belief system, like knowing your worth. Like the truth is we're all worthy if we're addicted, and we're worthy in recovery. That doesn't change. It's a false belief to think we're not worthy when we're in the problem though. That was my light bulb moment.
I'm so grateful for you sharing that story with us, your story with us, and certainly that does help tie together a lot of just why both you're so passionate about what you're doing as a coach and what you're doing as an author. It also, just backs up this is something that you've lived. One of the things that impresses me most about your story is just your willingness to bring this alcohol addiction into the light, both early on as well as to continue to talk about your experience in your work, which I know that can be one of the scariest things, especially for high achieving individuals or for perfectionists. And so curious what you would say, let's just say we've got a listener that's listening to this episode, and what you've just said really resonates with them, whether it's alcohol or something else, but they just feel like there's something else that they know is not healthy, but they're just scared about bringing it into the light because what are the consequences going to be socially and professionally and this, that, and the other? A lot of fear, a lot of shame, a lot of guilt. What would you say to that person?
Well, that's very normal and so common. And I would first say they do not have to be loud and proud and write a book and go on podcasts and talk about it. You can be anonymous. And I say that all the time. I'm still not sure how I got to this situation. I wrote the book and thought, oh crap, now I have to talk about it. I have to tell people. Honestly, it was just a few weeks ago I announced, because the book is available for pre-order everywhere now. And so I announced it on my socials and I thought, oh my gosh, my mom's friends don't even know I'm sober. Like now I have to explain this. And so, I think, that was all God ordained that in my life the way it was supposed to be. But I want the listener to know they don't have to do that. And there are several anonymous communities, whether it's alcohol or something else. And in fact, one of the things I'm doing when people pre-order my book, they can go on my website and get the details for this. But I'm starting a Facebook community where you can come into the community. It's anonymous. It's one of those secret groups. So you don't even have to use your real name. And I'll be there though. It's not another sober community online. We have a lot of great ones that are working. So I'm not starting that. It is a place where I can hold people's hand and help them get plugged in to a community of people that can help them with specifically whatever they're struggling with. And, I'll do what I can to plug people in because I think that is the most important thing. Knowing this, you're not unique. This is not whatever their issue is, it's not unique. There are millions of people that probably have that same exact thing. And so, we're all special just like everybody else. So we've got to have a little bit of humility. But you don't have to be loud and proud. You can still be anonymous. And the great thing is you're anonymous with the people that have the same thing as you. So my guess is if someone's not ready for that, then there's probably some deeper work. But I think most people that are looking to make a change will be at a level of pain where they're willing to at least share with people that have the same exact problem as them in a safe, anonymous group. So that's what I'm going to help people get plugged into.
That's awesome. No, I love that. Thank you for your work and your passion in that area and the willingness just to share your story in hopes that others are helped. I mean, that's what we do, why we do this podcast. So I'm excited here, just for the conversation today. I want to shift just a little bit more into the coaching side with the thought of community. So you are talking about how community has been essential for you with some of the recovery and the addiction, but we also know that community is essential for high achievers and entrepreneurs. And I would imagine that there's a level there. We hear often, the road to entrepreneurship can feel very alone at times because there's not a lot of people, there's a lot of people who like to, stick with the herd, stick with the 9 to 5. The very essence, I think, of an entrepreneur is being a trailblazer. As you've worked with so many folks in coaching, how important is community, and what would you say to entrepreneurs who feel like they're going at it alone? How do you coach them in that regard?
I have I've had the opportunity to coach people in teams, mostly the small businesses. I grew up in Silicon Valley before it was Silicon Valley, because of my age. So I saw, and my husband works in, he's in finance, but if you're in Silicon Valley, all your clients are tech. So I had the opportunity to watch firsthand him work with so many companies to take them public. And sometimes that was two people. I don't really remember it ever being one person though. It was like two people and then they formed a team, right? Maybe one person had an idea, but like you two are doing this podcast, right? They got a partner. So I think one person where two or more are gathered, and iron sharpens iron, right? So I don't have the experience of one lone wolf trying to go it alone. So I really wouldn't know. I think iron sharpens iron, and you need a team, and if you're building a team, same thing, know that outcome, and maybe some personalities are going to work and some don't. But yeah, I think community is very important. And then obviously the communication within that team. Right, knowing each other's different personality types. I love those assessments where you give to a team in a business, and then everybody knows, oh, okay, that person is the one who their feelings don't get hurt, or they say things and it sounds sharp, but we're not going to be offended by that because we know that's their personality. Okay, now this person, they're the person that gets their feelings hurt, and they're the sensitive, right? So just kind of knowing everyone's different personality types is super helpful when you're working, whether it's just with one person, a partner, or a small team.
Yeah, I think that's really good. I mean, Nick says it all the time on this show, but it's if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And just recognizing that, nobody has all of the strengths, and everybody does have blind spots too. So by having a trusted partner that you can go side to side with and build alongside of, that's really huge. On this kind of topic of coaching, with Nick kind of turning the corner there, I would love to go a little further into something that you said just at a high level with your background in psychology, counseling, being a more traditional licensed therapist, and then getting into coaching. There's a few things that I really like about the way you've described coaching, especially in that you do try to put an end date on it. It is more objective based, trying to hit certain outcomes and goals. I know that that's one of the things that, as I've talked with people, they're skeptical about. Both kind of, they lump counseling and coaching sort of in together. And one of the struggles with counseling is that they feel like, oh man, I'm going to be on this train forever. Like there's no end in sight. And so maybe let's just talk about whether it's some of your success stories, or whether it's just what are a lot of those like objectives, goals. Who are the ideal candidates, I suppose, for coaching versus who maybe, what are the limitations of coaching where somebody might need to also have a licensed therapist that's helping them work through things?
Yeah, that's a great question. It is one I go over with clients in the first session, that the difference is, I think, when people want to move to the next level and they've hit a level of either pain or frustration that makes change a must, they're ready for coaching. They're ready to say, okay, this didn't work. Help me get unstuck. It's really about getting unstuck and then moving forward. When somebody, let's call it healing, when somebody still wants healing, probably from something that happened in the past, then I will suggest they also get a therapist. And working with a therapist is so helpful for that. And hopefully they're not in therapy forever. Hopefully they get to a level where they shined a light on why they were feeling the way they don't want to feel anymore. And then a coach can really help with exercises and tools to condition and, put the way they do want to feel, where they do want to go into practice. And how, we will hold clients accountable too, right? If you want accountability, if you want to move forward, that's where coaching's good. And coaches, we don't tell, we ask questions. So it's all about asking the client question to get them to come up with their own answer and shine light on they kind of get unstuck that way. You just asking questions so that they can tap into their own creativity and resourcefulness. So we don't tell or give advice. Sometimes I'll say, I'm going to take my coaching hat off because I'm just going to be direct and give you some advice right now. Or if somebody's in danger, you're going to want to give advice. And then a consultant, that's a third thing too. A consultant is also a person they should probably be an expert at who they're consulting, right? If you guys hired a consultant to help with your podcast, they're going to tell instead of ask, and they're going to be directive and say, here's what to do to move farther, faster for your podcast.
Yeah.
A coach is, we're actually trained to really, even though I have a niche, was trained to coach anyone, anywhere, anytime, because I'm an expert at the psychology of what someone's doing and they're an expert at what they're doing, right? I don't need to be an expert if I'm coaching an architect, I don't need to know how to be an architect, because that's really, it's, 20% ish mechanics and 80% psychology. So I'm just talking to that person about the psychology of going farther in their job, in their career.
That's helpful. I like that sort of Venn diagram in my mind of coaching, counseling, and consulting. I'm glad you threw that third one in there. And this is perhaps a gross oversimplification, because there does seem to be a lot of overlap, especially between coaching and counseling. But it seems like there's a fundamental proactive approach with coaching, as you talk about. Like it's about moving forward. It's about leveling up. It's about that. What sort of abundance is in the future, and how do we go after that? Not that it doesn't get into some of the past, but there's a fundamental proactive what's next mindset. Whereas a lot of that counseling, with it being a more centered on healing, there's sort of a reactive approach, not in a negative sense, but of just let's look at everything that's happened before, anything that you've suppressed, anything that you've buried, anything that you can't make sense of, and help bring healing to those areas. Do you think that's a fair sort of?
I do.
Again, at a high level.
I do. That's very good. Yeah.
Cool. And that's helpful to think about how those two things can be really complementary to one another, that it's just because you have a therapist or a counselor doesn't mean that you can't benefit from coaching, and vice versa, that those two things can very much be in tandem.
Very much. That's true. Mm-hmm.
Chris, I'm curious, as we're talking about, these different roles that folks play, we are in a day and age where everybody claims to be an expert at something. You've been around it long enough to, you smile because I know you've heard it. When someone, is saying, hey, I am running into walls, I want to take the business, I want to take my own level my own skills to the next level. What is some bogus expert advice in coaching that people should look out for? And maybe kind of, how do you smell out the bad actors versus, hey, this is a good coaching scenario. What are maybe some questions to ask, or just things to be on the lookout for? I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot on that one, but just curious what your experience has brought with that.
Yeah, I would ask, if you're hiring a coach, I would ask they should give you a free, a complimentary first session, because not everyone's a match to work together. So you should have a complimentary first session to see if you should work together, for one. if they're telling and giving advice, that's really not coaching. So if they're asking questions, and if those questions make you, in that complimentary session, if the questions that person asks you make, if that's going to make you go, I never thought about it that way before, I'm going to rethink that. If it challenges you in a way that is energizing and kind of gets the juices flowing for what's next, then you've found a good coach that knows how to tap into your creativity. So that's one way. My coaching friends are good coaches. So I don't have a, but I do know that there's a lot of people who aren't even certified that just call themselves a coach. So, I'd probably make sure they were a board certified coach.
And
ICF is an organization like the Umbrella International Coaching Federation, if they've studied under ICF certified classes, that type of thing.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that certification. You'd mentioned that. I mean, that's also Nick's touching on it, but one of the concerns, like it's all too easy in today's day and age to set up your account on X and Instagram and just say, "Hey, I'm a coach now," and you can make it look really good on social media, all of the advice and whatever, but I didn't really realize that there is a board certification, especially for life business coaching, like what you're doing. And so, what does it mean to be board certified?
You took classes, and I had to pass an exam, and then you have to keep it updated, just like if a CPA does, or anybody. So if somebody's looking for a coach, they should have their like go to LinkedIn, maybe not be looking on Instagram.
Yeah.
On my LinkedIn, it says where I went to school, where I got my life coaching certification. I even put on there's a place on LinkedIn where you can put your number, your like certification number, or like your license. I put those on there because if people want to look it up, I even in my agreement, like they should do that complimentary, you should ask to look at their agreement. And like in my agreement, I say I coach under the, I can't think of the words right now, the ... board of ethics, right? And then there's a link and you can just click it on the PDF and go read the board of ethics that I coach under, which I'm held accountable to. I think that would be really helpful for people to do. I mean, like you would do that for a doctor, or
right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I guess if they worked at a certain hospital, you probably wouldn't, but yeah, you're going to want to know that someone's not just slapping the name coach on them.
Which happens all too often.
Yeah.
No, that's good. Well, Chris, what I want to do is we're getting toward our close here, a shift to our gold nugget rounds like we always do. Grateful for the discussion today. I know we've covered a few of these at length, but I'm excited to dive into these and see where the conversation takes us, if you're cool with that.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. All right. Well, first one here today, we talk about the 5 F's of abundant journey, and we got family, faith, fitness, finance, and future. Holistically, and I think you and I were talking offline about this, all of these intersect really for a life of abundance. But, and maybe, a lot of times we ask our guests, hey, what's one of these that you're working on growing this year? But maybe on top of that, what's one of the ones there that you really push people and encourage them to focus on in coaching? So family, faith, fitness, finance, future. What would you say there?
I'd start with fitness because I think our physiology is leading everything else.
I love that. No, that's good. And if that's not healthy, probably the rest of us are not either, right?
Right. It's hard to, it's hard to think straight if you don't feel good physically.
Yeah. Next one here, are you a journey or a destination person? And again, I'm curious in reflecting back on your journey, being a high achiever, a lot of times I think those folks are destination people. But do you find yourself today being a journey or destination person, and how has that impacted you along the way?
Today, I really can say I'm a journey person. I think just having the kids launched and seeing their success and that they all have like their significant other now, that's super satisfying. And so my husband and I both are going, let's just marinate in. We've worked really hard. Let's marinate in the fruits of all of this, right? So it does take intention though to be a journey person.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I never flip straight to the destination and then have to reel myself back.
Sure. Yeah.
Gosh,
You're good.
I want to just do a whole nother podcast episode with you on marriage and parenting. Consider
Let's do it. Oh, I love it.
Season of life, but it's like, oh man, just one day, like I hope that I get to just marinate in almost 3 decades of successful marriage and seeing my kids launched and thriving. So anyhow, just as a side note, congratulations. That's a wonderful, wonderful thing to be able to say, both 29 years of marriage and to have your kids where they're at. That's so cool.
That's so encouraging. I love that.
Thank you.
I love that. Next one here. What's a quote from a book or mentor that stuck with you along your journey?
Oh, there's so many. I'm so into quotes. Okay. Viktor Frankl wrote Man's Search for Meaning, and he's a Holocaust survivor. Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. And I love that. It's a great reminder for me that just what is the story we're attaching to that thing that was outside of our control. And I mean, he was in a concentration camp, so that's huge.
Well, and I think on that point, we could do another entire episode simply on mindset and beliefs. I mean, you've touched on some of that, but man, that goes so much deeper. What's your framework? What's your mindset? What's your beliefs? What are you telling yourself? All of that. And so I love that starts with attitude with that quote. I love that. Last one here. What is a dream or goal that you have that you've not been able to make happen yet?
Okay. With the launch of this book that I'm launching in March, I would love to make some bestseller lists and really get the word out there to sell many, many, many pre-orders and copies. I'm excited about that. Good.
I love it. Well, we've teased the fact that we would love to have further conversation with you. It's amazing how quickly an hour goes by. I am so glad that you do have your next book, Grace Yourself, coming out in March, which is available for pre-order now. We're going to have links in the description, but just so that folks can hear it from your mouth, where is the best place for people to go, both to pre-order the book as well as to connect with you and follow along your journey?
Go to my website, chrisjansencoaching.com. There's also, there's a link in that website to the graceyourselfbook.com. And that is where I have provided a limited number of VIP upgrade packages that are available to listeners only between now and launch day. So if people want to pre-order more than one book, it's all detailed out there, but you can have my workbook. I can I'll do a virtual workshop. I can host your book club, all these great things depending on how many books people want to buy. So that's all at graceyourselfbook.com.
Awesome. Well, again, listeners, do check out those links in the show notes. Do pick up a copy of Grace Yourself. Chris, just cannot thank you enough for coming on the show with us, for sharing your wisdom, your experience, and I couldn't be more excited for you either with the release of this new book. So we will definitely stay in touch. I can't wait to hear how it goes, but thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. This was fun.
Listeners, thanks for coming along with us. We'll be back next week for another episode. See you next time.